going on, fantasy and framers? Welcome to Dynasty 365. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. With me, we got Justin Taylor and Aaron Weingartner. Today, we're going to be talking about Dynasty buy low candidates, and I'm just going to leave it at that because Aiden's going to do the honors of breaking it down even further after we get back from this intro.
Okay, everybody, we got a great show for you all tonight because tonight's show we'll be discussing a bunch of buy low targets to make trades in your dynasty leagues right before the 2025 NFL draft. As we know, in a couple weeks, the draft is about to change a lot of things with your dynasty team, player values, your dynasty team situation. So all three of us came up with some running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, whatever it is. We did not compare notes beforehand. Keep it authentic. I will start.
Well, before you start, Aiden, no, you're good. Before you start, just a reminder, folks, this is Fantasy and Frames Wednesdays. We got Dynasty 365 right now. Then we got Shoot the Gap at 9 p.m. Eastern, followed by Fourth and Frames. And we got a lot of rookie mock drafts to go over. A combo offense and IDP rookie mock draft that JT and I will go over on Shoot the Gap. And then on Fourth and Frames at 10 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have our first redraft mock draft of the season heading into the NFL draft. And of course, we'll have one after the NFL draft because obviously, like Aiden, you were just alluding to, things are going to be changing in the next few weeks for a lot of these players. Before we get into the topic for today, let's go around the frames and just check on how everyone's doing. JT, how are you doing, man?
Oh, doing all right. Things are kind of crazy right now, but trying to get it all together. Got a million articles I'm working on, trying to do drafts. I'm in the middle of like 3 drafts right now. Didn't feel very good yesterday. Had to sleep off, had a real bad migraine, but got me behind a little bit. But I'm up today trying to get caught up on everything, get ready for all the shows and kind of get all my stuff done. Trying to keep an eye on my drafts as well. It's always weird when you're like in a draft where you're at the front of a draft, the middle of a draft, the end of a draft. That never seems like it times up very well where you're making picks. It's always like the totally most random times. So trying to keep an eye on all those. And then me and you did our draft. So we're all fired up and ready to go for our IDP combined draft for later on Shoot the Gap. So that'll be interesting, a fun one to go over.
Absolutely. Aiden, brother, what's going on with you? You have been the model fantasy and framer. First of all, you wear glasses, so you're already ahead of the curve of most people here at Fantasy and Frames, so that's good. 2, article after article after article, you have just been on a hot streak, so congratulations with all your hard work there. And if you haven't already, folks, follow him at Weingartner13 over on the X Machine, and I think it's Weingartner13.bsky.
Yeah.
Or on Blue Sky, basically, for those over on Blue Sky. So definitely check him out and give him a follow wherever you see him because he's got a sharp mind, folks, and we're very happy to have him on board. And with that, let's get into some buy low candidates. Aiden, why don't you start us off and take us away with somebody that you are interested in?
To me, these are in no specific order, but as soon as I started this exercise earlier, I was like, this guy sticks out. To me, the premier buy low candidate right now is Miami Dolphins wide receiver Jalen Waddle. Do not give up hope, folks. Go trade for him in every dynasty format that you can. Because I'll lay it out here. I know from experience drafting him a lot that Jalen Waddle's last couple of years in terms of his ADP, the cost, the value, redraft, dynasty, whatever, has been very disappointing. But if you want access to this high-powered Miami fantasy monster scoring offense, which you should, mind you, with Devon Achane, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, I think for especially dynasty purposes on the trade market, Jalen Waddle is the most value piece. You'll have to spend the least, if that makes sense, between all the pieces for the Dolphins. I'm in the camp of he's a big bounce-back candidate. And for beyond 2025, if Tyreek Hill's traded during the draft or right before the season, this buy low, quote unquote, buy low window for Jalen Waddle is gone. But I am under the assumption that 2025 will be Tyreek Hill's last season with the Miami Dolphins. That might sound bold, but whether it's he's retired or he just forces his way out, diva receiver, whatever, I think he'll be gone. And then it's all wheels up for Jalen Waddle. He just signed a mega lucrative extension last offseason. You know he's there for the next 4 or 5 years at least. And I think Tyreek Hill's like well on his way out the door, whether that be this offseason or next offseason. I would pay up to do whatever it takes personally. And I just like the value between all the Achane, Hill still a little overvalued in my opinion, and Waddle still a little undervalued. I know the last couple of years have been pretty from a fantasy standpoint, redraft or dynasty, but from a dynasty lens, I'm still very much on the train. Huge bounce back coming for years ahead for Jalen Waddle.
Well, I don't know if you saw the news earlier today, but
I saw
charged or there's a domestic issue going on at home with him. And so your buy low window may be even shorter now
after that.
If he's facing league. That's a great one. I was looking. He was actually one of the guys I was going to talk about also. And going back to last season in PPR formats, he started off week 1, 16.2 points, 109 yards, and you're thinking, "Oh, yay, this is fantastic." To the moon, right? It's not till week 12 where he gets another 144 yards and 28.4 fantasy points. But then after that, it's 53 yards, 99 yards with 11.3 and 20.9 respectively. And that's it. That's all you got for double-digit production. And that is, a lot of that obviously has to play with Tua being injured for a good chunk of the year there. That, the inconsistencies of the quarterback position, I think, had to play a lot going on there. And just the Dolphins just didn't look good all last year. I think maybe they were redefining their identity, committing a little bit more to the running game, giving Devon Achane a little bit more play. And just everything just seemed out of whack just from the get-go in Miami. So here's hoping to a resurgence there in that Dolphins offense. I will say there is a name, and JT being, somebody who knows basically every single rookie and every single, format, because you are like Ron Jaworski. You've watched 1,000 hours of game film on this one player, and this is who you got. For those who don't know that, that's an ESPN reference from the early 2000s. So you're welcome for those who do get that. Malik Washington coming out of Virginia, their number one wide receiver, is somebody who is their slot wide receiver, technically drafted last year. He could see some uptick in value, and that's really a buy low value because nobody's talking about Malik Washington. Nobody's talking about what he could potentially do out of the slot. And again, if Tyreek Hill is no longer there, you're going to see a lot of increase in the usage of these wide receivers. And I think Malik Washington could be a sneaky super duper buy low, not just a regular buy low, but a super duper buy low.
Dirt cheap buy low.
Yeah, Jorge, I absolutely love that call. Malik Washington was a guy I was trying to grab everywhere last year in rookie drafts. I did not expect a lot about him last year just because with Tyreek and Waddle and everybody in front of him. But he was a guy I was like, man, he could end up making his way into this lineup, especially if someone like Tyreek got traded or someone got hurt. I was like, this is a guy that's going to be impressive. People forget he was on a real bad team at Virginia, and he was one of the top receivers in the nation his last year before coming out. Was a guy that was drafted a little lower in the NFL draft than I think a lot of people who watched a ton of college football like me thought he would get drafted. I think a lot of us thought he could be a late third, maybe early fourth round pick, and I think he eventually I'd have to look it up. I think he eventually dropped to the fifth. If I'm correct. But he's a guy that I like a lot. I think he is one of those second year players that, didn't do a lot as a rookie. So people are going to kind of forget about him. They're going to think about all the new guys coming in. He's a guy I definitely like as a buy candidate. You could get him, I bet you, as an added on piece in some of these situations, like without that much of a worry, where someone's like, oh, okay, I'll throw him in there. I like that. I think Waddle is an absolute buy low right now. People are out on him. I'm in a startup draft right now. And I tell you what, Waddle just plummeted in this startup draft. It was unbelievable how far he fell. And I think it's a combination of people aren't sure what's going on with Tyreek. He had a down year last year. I still think a lot of people don't believe in Tua. There's a ton of Tua hate out there, and so I think people are still a little bit iffy about him. So I love that call by Aiden. I think Waddle is a guy that if you tried to get him 2 years ago, you were going to pay through the nose to get him 2 years ago. And right now you could probably get him at a fairly decent value, especially if you're not trying to do a 1-for-1 trade. If you're trying to do like get a couple pieces combined, I think he's a guy you could get in there for a really reasonable price.
And with the way the wide receiver class is for this upcoming NFL draft for these rookie prospects, you could definitely even, instead of going necessarily player for player, definitely package some picks there, some rookie draft picks, and kind of facilitate a trade that way versus having to go for the player for player swap there, which could potentially weaken your roster depending on your situation. For those over on the X Machine, thank you very much for watching, as well as over on Facebook. And then if you're on our YouTube channel, folks, head over to our YouTube channel, hit that like and subscribe button so you're notified when Fantasy and Frames puts out awesome content. If we do say so ourselves, me being super humble, right, on behalf of everybody here. So definitely check that out. That is a really good call. Let's get into another wide receiver. Let me go this time. And I was very surprised when I was looking at his advanced metrics this past year. And that's Juwan Jennings, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, especially since the trade of Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders. I'm not worried about Demarcus Robinson, coming in there. Technically, that's Brandon Ayuk's job until Ayuk potentially may be traded on draft night, as there's all that talk about him. But going back to Juwan Jennings, you look at, last season, the first read percentage, first on the team, receiving yards per game, first on the team, yards per route run in terms of his efficiency, number one on the team. Like the guy just was, target share, number one on the team, just, catch rate, number one on the team. Like, I don't know what else I can say about this guy. This guy is fantastic out of the slot. And so now you're definitely going to see an uptick in volume here, going over to, our lads right now, ourlads.com, they have Ayuk listed as the left wide receiver, Becky Pearsall as the right wide receiver, and Juwan Jennings right there in the slot. And so you look at the elusiveness, you look at the productivity when getting the extra reps, and most importantly, you look at the availability, especially after the Deebo trade. I would think after the Deebo trade, there was probably a spike a little bit in his rostership percentage amongst the fantasy managers and dynasty managers in particular. But I don't think it's been hyped up enough, just given the fact that we don't know what they're going to do in the draft, meaning the 49ers. We don't know if they're going to, basically retool their wide receiver core. And if they don't, I think Juwan Jennings could have a very, very solid year, and he could definitely be somebody you could pick up as a value. Aiden, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Juwan Jennings.
No, Jorge, I love this call. Like the last couple weeks I've been thinking about. I think before the Deebo trade, Ricky Pearsall could have been on this buy low list. After the Deebo trade, forget that's over with. No more window there. But Juwan Jennings, like, is the wide receiver 3, maybe even 2 if Pearsall doesn't take off, like I'm hoping, and we're all hoping for fantasy purposes. I feel like the 49ers the last 2 or 3 years have just tried to upgrade and replace over Juwan Jennings, and he just forces them to keep Brock Purdy, keep feeding him the ball. Whenever, you just said the metrics were advanced, whenever Juwan Jennings has been in the field, he has produced. My concern over the last 3 years is, man, every time this guy flashes in the field, he's a monster. Remember that he was a waiver wire during last year, if you remember correctly, in redraft, that 1 week he had like 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was something ridiculous like that. And I'm like, man, if this guy can just get on the field, the concern was he had all these guys ahead of him. But now Deebo's gone. Is Ayuk going to play week 1? Is Pearsall going to take off like we hope? Kittle's 32, going on 33 years old, injury history, this and that, and what have you. Now he doesn't have all those cluster of guys in front of him. So I love this. I think people are treating us like a cheap veteran, like, oh, let's just throw him in a dynasty trade and see what happens, when as a fantasy manager, you can capitalize on that as a trade asset and maybe a package instead of just a straight up thing. Because in general, I think packages are more useful for those types of trades where people are not thinking about veterans like Juwan Jennings.
Let me ask you a question, and I guess ask both of you a question before we get JT your thoughts on Juwan Jennings. Is it just me that's hypocritical in the fact that I hate 2-for-1 trades as far as being on the receiving end of having to take on somebody else's baggage.
Like players or picks?
Like players, right?
Oh.
But I'll be the first one to send out a 2-for-1 trade because I'm trying to offload that baggage. Like, is everybody else hypocritical like that, or
like you try to convince someone you're not going to get any better value than these two,
right? But then they pull the same thing on me, and I'm like, bro.
I think that's fine. I mean, I don't know.
I think a lot of people do it. A lot of people try to throw in that extra guy to try to up the trade just a little bit with a guy they don't really want. I'm a guy that offers a lot of wants a 2-for-1. I want to trade a guy and get two because I usually am looking at a guy that I think has some value that's undervalued. And I think for me, I try to look at the other way. I'm like, that guy really isn't doing anything for you, or you're probably going to cut him, aren't you? Or like he's going to sit on your bench all year. And I like him.
Hype him up.
I like him, so I'm like, I'll just take him off your hands, and because I see the upside there. But I do think, a lot of people will do that 2-for-1 just to kind of throw garbage that they think they're going to cut anyway to try to add value to it if they think they're a little short on their side. So I think you could do that. I mean, I'm into a lot of those where I'll do that, and if I feel like it's a short-sighted, I'll talk about like a pick swap. I'll be like, okay, you're getting the best player. Give me these two guys, plus trade me a third for a second. Like flop a second and a third round pick, and then give me the player that you don't really want anyway. And since you're getting the best guy in the deal, and that's where I'll do those deals. And I've done a lot of those deals over the years, where if you put it in the trade calculator, whatever you might use, or you look at some people and they ask about value, they're going to tell me I lost the trade. But I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about always winning the trade directly right when it happens. I want to take the guys that I believe in or I think can do something, and I want the value then. Because there's a lot of times I've made those deals and then turns around and if I at the end of the season, if I offer that same trade, people are like, "What are you talking about?" Like, no, you won that. You're going to win that by a ton. I'm like, well, you said I lost at the beginning of the year, so it happens. Those values change. Things happen. So you got to trust kind of your own instincts on stuff like that. I mean, I've made some trades because everyone's like, you just really should make that trade. You have the most value. And I'm just like, but I really like the guys I have now. And I know their value is going to go up. And so, yes, I understand I'm winning the value trade at the moment. But I'm like, half the time I'm pissed at the end of the year. I'm like, I should have kept those guys because I knew I loved them. And now their value is like through the roof. So I think sometimes you just got to trust your process and take the guys you really like. And then again, if you lose the trade, as long as you've got the guys you want, I don't care what anybody else.
Yeah, just get your guy anyway.
So let's quickly go back before we jump on to the next player. JT, your thoughts on Jauan Jennings?
So I think this is funny because we just started talking about Washington for Miami. The other guy I was taking all over drafts last year, along with Washington at the end of my drafts, was Jacob Cowing from Arizona. I was like, because I knew Cowing wasn't going to play at all last year. I knew it. I was like, there's no way this guy's going to see the field unless a bunch of guys get hurt.
Taxi squad.
But I was like, I think this guy could do something in the next 2 years or 3 years. I was expecting one of those guys get moved, and I was expecting Cowing to get this slot wide receiver spot this year. That's what I was banking on. But Jauan Jennings was impressive last year. When he got a chance to play, he was good, and he wasn't just a flash in the pan, like, 1-2 games, you're like, he'll never do that again. I think he has a shot to be a pretty good receiver, especially with Ayuk coming off injury. Purcell obviously looked good near the end of the year, but he's coming, he had the gunshot wound. So it's like, this isn't like a just totally set it and forget it Niners wide receiver core. I think you're going to see some stuff get mixed up. I think this team is going to have to throw the ball a little bit more this year than they have in the past couple of years. So I think they're going to rely on a few more wide receivers that have big years. Again, how quickly can Ayuk come back? Purcell, I see an uptick for him in year 2. I think he's going to be good. But, Jennings, again, former quarterback, moving to wide receiver has been impressive. I still like Cowing. He's a guy that's sitting on my taxi squad in case something does happen. But my shares of him are hurting, and I've had to look at some teams. I'm like, I might have to drop him. Even though I liked him a lot, I might have to drop him if Jennings just completely dominates this slot wide receiver role and he never sees the field, which, in all honesty, I think could happen. And I think people just are not on Jennings' name. Like if you had him on your team last year, he helped you win some games, so you know about him. But a lot of people are like, he's not a big name that people are out there going, you know who I should trade for? Juwan Jennings. Like no one, there's very few people thinking that. So that's a good time to do it because like he's not on a lot of people's radars. And so like going out and getting a guy like that, I think is right now is a good thing, especially before the draft and no one quite knows who's going to draft. I would honestly be a little shocked if the Niners came out and took a wide receiver very early. I mean, they've taken a lot of wide receivers the last couple of years. You know, you got Ayuk was a first rounder in 2020. Jennings was a seventh rounder in 2020. Obviously, a guy was a former quarterback. Purcell, first rounder last year. They took Cowing in the fourth rounder last year. I mean, they've got a lot of guys. You know, just signed Demarcus Robinson. So they've got quite a few guys on this team. So I'd be shocked if they took an early round shot at wide receiver in the draft.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. And what's another player we should talk about?
Okay, this wasn't intentional, but of the position thing, but I'm going to throw out a running back. And I know his name has been in trade rumors the last few days. I'm alluding to Breece Hall. I think he's a very good, the more you think about it and look at it, very good buy low right now. I know some of the advanced metrics, Jorge, if you want to pull this up in a minute, but I know some of to back them up. I know some of the advanced metrics last year, just from the eye test, kind of dissipated, but I still think Breece Hall is a big, burly, really good goal line back. I think he's a really good receiving back. The only thing is Justin Fields, for dynasty purposes, the next 2 years isn't really a check down like quarterback at all. And I know that Aaron Glenn last week saying at the owner meeting, well, if we can get all three of these guys talking about Isaiah Davis, Braylon, and Breece Hall respectively on the field at the same time, then that would be great. I don't think that's going to happen. What kind of personnel would that ever happen? But anyway, I know Breece Hall would get traded. I don't believe those rumors over the last few days, but let's just say hypothetically he does. He goes to Denver. Or he goes to Dallas. I don't care about Javonte or Miles Sanders. Sorry. He'll be the workhorse in both those places. If he goes to Denver with Bo Nix, who absolutely loves to check the ball down, that would be awesome. So I think because of the presence of Braylon and Isaiah Davis, then I think fantasy managers should be hoping he gets real life traded to the Denver Broncos. At least I am. But because of the unknown right now, I would easily – I know this running back class is loaded, but Breece Hall's still really young, and people – I'm not very high in the Jets offense right now, and the whole thing with Justin Fields being a mobile QB is going to hurt Breece Hall. I would very much be heavily interested in the Breece Hall trading, buying low, if you will, because I think if we come out week one and Breece Hall's the workhorse once again, forget buy low. But right now, I think Breece Hall's a perfect buy low candidate.
You know, you talk about the advanced metrics or just the metrics in general per PFF, looking at him as a both rusher and receiving back. He's ranked as their running back 46th.
Oh,
you look, that's no bueno, right? You look at his yards after contact. Let me find that again. Running back 24. So like this guy was like being considered a top 10, top 12 pick in redraft last year.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming in Dynasty in that same region or area. You know, and then the whole Jets team just failed to meet expectations last year. And so with Breece Hall, and then everybody's going to be talking about like, oh, well, he's still not over his ACL tear from a couple of years ago, which there could be some validity in that. The fact that you are hearing potential rumors that they may try and trade Breece Hall somewhere and go after GNT, that, take that for what it is. But I think you could make the argument that he is a buy low, especially with people who are kind of plugged in to like the advanced metrics like we're talking about, like plugged into the, where he finished. Recency bias is a thing. People, don't really like to think about 2-3 years down the road, which is ironic because it's Dynasty and that's what we're talking about, right?
Gotta do that.
Even in Dynasty, like people are wired to be in redraft mode this time of year, and they think recency bias to the last year. Ironically, when we get to redraft season, people are still in dynasty mode. So like we're never as fantasy football on the same wavelength of like the time of year things are supposed to be. For Breece Hall though, I feel like buy low. Like when you say buy low, do you mean in terms of like draft pick compensation, or do you think it's more of like a player trade that would be, or a combo of both? Like, what would be a buy low for, in your opinion, for Breece Hall?
That's a tough one. I know we just wanted to throw out names and not get specific scenarios, but I'm going to think real quick. I think you would have to give up a decently high pick. I'm not throwing out first on rookie pick or anything, but I think you'd have to give up a decently high pick and maybe a throw-in player. To me, I would do that, but I don't know how other people feel just because of Aaron Glenn's comments and the whole committee-ish thing and the trade rumors. I would do it for that, like a second-round rookie pick plus a throw-in, but I don't know how other people would feel.
JT, what are your thoughts on Breece Hall being a potential buy low candidate?
I like Breece Hall. I think people, if you would have went into last season, I think most people had Breece Hall as their like RB for Dynasty, like 2 or 3. A lot of people were really high on Breece Hall. It was like Bijan, Breece Hall, right near the top for a lot of people. I just think everything that's kind of gone wrong with the Jets. I think sometimes you just see that people want to get off of guys because they're on a team that's struggling. That's when I want to buy a guy. I also think with Justin Fields, he's going to steal some of the running game because that's just Fields. But I also think the Jets are going to lean a little bit heavier on the run game because they don't want to put Fields in situations where he's throwing all the time, where Aaron Rodgers wanted to throw the ball as much as he could. So I think that's a possibility. I still think you're going to have to pay to get Breece Hall. But if you got somebody that's in love with this running back class and you have a late first and you can trade a late first and get Breece Hall, I would do that. I think there's going to be a bunch of people that love the RBs. I'm not sure exactly, depending on your league, who's going to be there at the end of the first round. Tight end premium leagues, you're going to have some of those tight ends there. Depending on what your league thinks about quarterbacks. In a super flex league, I've seen those guys get drafted top 3 and drop all the way to the end of the first round, depending on what people think about them. So I'm not averse to trading a late first round pick for Breece Hall.
Can I just say one last thing on Breece Hall quick? Breece Hall, the Jets have no choice. I say if week 1 workhorse, they have no choice to give him workhorse. I think the world of Garrett Wilson, but outside of Garrett Wilson, the Jets have literally nothing. Like before the draft, they literally have nothing. They have no choice but to make Breece Hall a workhorse. So that's another reason to go trade for him.
Alrighty. Let me give you my next player. Ironically, it's going to be a running back. He finished in fantasy points per game in 2023 as the RB7. This past year, he finished as the RB35 in fantasy points per game. New head coach, new situation, new opportunity. I'm talking about Travis Etienne with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think, with the offensive coordinator coming over from Tampa Bay, that you're going to see kind of a resurgence in this Jaguars offense. Maybe that I shouldn't say a resurgence. We may actually see a surge or resurgence in what this offense could look like, especially with the skill players that they have. Sometimes you got to get back to basics. Sometimes you don't need to have an overcrowded room in terms of talent. Like you have Brian Thomas, we're assuming Brenton Strange is going to get some play at the tight end position, right? And then you have, Bigsby and Travis Etienne, and which one, looking at skill set, both as a receiver and a rusher, which running back models after what they did in Tampa last year? I feel like Etienne is closer to a Bucky than I do Tank Bigsby. And again, we're going again from 7 in 2023 to 35, in 2025. Just everything was going wrong in Jacksonville last year, and the running back situation was not protected from that. You look at his fantasy points bi-weekly, looking at his game logs here in PPR scoring. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games last season with double-digit fantasy points in PPR scoring. But we're not talking like the 20s, right? We're not talking about the type of performances we saw in 2023. We're talking about like of 15, and then a bunch of 11s and 12s. And so definitely not somebody that you were like hoping to get in terms of production at a high-end level at the running back position. And again, going back to recency bias, people like to think about last year, especially this time of year. And not to mention the fact that we've here at Dynasty 365, we talked ad nauseum about the rookie running back prospect class here. And if you haven't seen it, go over to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts and listen to the Dynasty 365 podcast where we talked about rookie prospect running backs. I mean, there are just so many that you could potentially see an oversaturation of the Dynasty fantasy football market, and you could actually, even heading into the draft, but even especially I think after the draft, you could finally find some value in getting Travis Etienne. JT, what are your thoughts on Etienne?
Yeah, if you were going to buy him, this is the time to do it. People are down on him. There's, like you said, everything could go wrong in Jacksonville, went wrong. I think the only guy anyone who wants right now is Brian Thomas. He's like the one guy that's expensive. Everybody else is cheap. Trevor Lawrence is cheap. Etienne's cheap. Obviously, Christian Kirk is gone now. He's at Houston. I'm not a big Etienne guy, to be honest with you, but I would take him for the right price. If there's someone who's just completely out on him and think Tank's going to take over, I'd make an offer for him, especially in this running back class. If you have anybody that people are down on a running back with how deep this class is, and I love this rookie class. I like I said, I'm in the middle of writing, a huge article of all the top 20 running backs for DLF right now in this draft class. So I really like this draft class, but this is a nice time to buy if people are like thinking everybody's going to get replaced by rookies. I think it's worth going back after him. I mean, 2 seasons ago, he was a top 5 RB in fantasy. So the guy's not dead yet. He had a bad year, but you're hoping they improve as a team offensively overall and that he gets back into the mix there and kind of gets back in good graces. I'm trading for him. I'm not giving a huge draft pick away, which I'm guessing if somebody else traded for him, they probably had to. So you have to get with someone who is just really sick of it or really mad about last year. I think you could possibly get him, at least a second, even a late second, or maybe even early third. Or if you do a pick swap, I think you could do it because just the amount of mock drafts I've done, the type of running backs you're getting in the middle of the second to early mid third, there's a lot of guys that people are going to consider possible starters. So I think there's a chance that some people would want to load up and try to get some of these young guys, especially if they're just kind of sick of Etienne. I would probably make that move.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with like a late second, early third rookie pick would be what I would both accept and offer, to be honest with you, at this point right now, today, April 9th, 2025.
Yeah, because it depends on what guys you like in that range. So if you look at where mock drafts are kind of going lately, I mean, that's your Ollie Gordons, that's your Cam Scatterbows, your Damian Martinez, your Dylan Sampsons. Those are the guys kind of in that range. So you just need to look at like, do I like one of those guys? Potentially, depending on where they land. Say one of those guys is a 4th round pick, but you really like him. Well, Etienne was a 1st round pick. Like we can't just totally forget about that. So it's, there's a chance that he's still going to get a shot there. So I wouldn't mind moving that. I mean, I like a lot of those guys. I'm not going to lie. I'm a big Damian Martinez guy, but I think you could still get him like in the 3rd somewhere. But you got to also look at Etienne, what he's actually done. Those guys are all working on potential. Etienne's actually proved that he can be a fantasy asset. So I would have no problem making that move.
What about you, Aiden? What are your thoughts? I said Etienne. I looked at your face. You're just like, ugh. Is that accurate?
Was that okay? Oh, yes, that is accurate. Just because I don't know what to think, man. I don't know what to think about this Jacksonville backfield right now. Is it going to be even with Liam Cohen, coming over? Is it going to be another split? Is basically going to be by is Etienne going to be guys? Etienne are basically going to be traded out. Because of that, I'm probably generally redraft or dynasty, but this is dynasty. So for dynasty in general, I'm probably staying away from both, especially ETN. And I think I'd probably dump him off my team for a 3rd round rookie pick, like you guys mentioned. But for a buy low, like I know it's going to be a relatively cheap cost, but I don't want to go down that path. I mean, sure, if I miss out on in my May rookie drafts on some of the high end to middle tier, even running backs that I would accept, then maybe I'll circle back for special exception, if you will, to go out and trade for ETN. But in general, I'm probably staying away from this backfield, unfortunately.
So I'm going to give you a scenario here, and it's a dynasty league that I have ETN, and I'm going to give you the following people. And you're going to tell me whether it makes sense to offload them for an ETN, okay?
For ETN? You want ETN?
That's correct. Would you dump currently without a team, or I guess he's with the Raiders, Raheem Mostert for Travis Etienne?
Okay, I know I don't like ETN, but come on. Raheem, yes, I would take ETN.
Okay. What would you do with Tajay Spears over Travis Etienne? Or with Travis Etienne? Who would you want?
Yeah, just because Tony Pollard's such a big name and he gets so much volume and Tajay Spears doesn't get really any, I'd take ETN slightly, though.
Okay. And the other running backs I have are crap. So we're just not on my bench at least.
Okay,
so the rest alone. But okay, just wanted to get gauge the
sorry, I'm not really.
No, it makes sense. Like my thought process is like, don't get me wrong. I'm not like, woo, let me go get Travis Etienne. This is the guy that I've been waiting to acquire all year since the season ended. But again, if I am depleted of running back starters or depth at the position, and you're telling me I can get for a high 3rd round pick somebody who's established running back in the league, has shown that he can perform and produce from a fantasy standpoint, and just chalk up last year to just everything went wrong with Jacksonville. Why not? You know what I mean? Like there comes a point where you have to decide, is a pick really worth all that it's cracked up to be over somebody who's been in the league and has produced?
It's fair.
I think he rides that line as far as and it really, again, it depends on your running back situation and your depth and what you got going on. But if I can acquire a starting running back in the NFL for a 3rd round pick, regardless, that it kind of makes sense to me, at least at this point, heading into the NFL draft.
Yeah, I traded in a best ball league, full IDP, so it's a little bit deeper draft. I traded Etienne. I traded him away for Najee Harris, Christian Kirk, and a 4th rounder.
Ooh,
that was 2 seasons ago. Now, I would absolutely go back and try to re-get Etienne in that same league. If I could turn around and trade him back for a 3rd, sold. Even maybe a late 2nd. But like I said, I wouldn't make the move. There's gonna be some trades that you're gonna have people laugh at you offering that because they still believe in them, but you're gonna have people who are gonna consider it when they look at this draft class of running backs. They just are, because here's the problem. If you get the trade done before the draft, I think you could maybe get a late 2nd, early 3rd. Because here's the problem for an ATN owner. Say the Jags go out and take a running back in the 3rd or 4th round, which I think is very legit, because I'm not a Tank Bigsby believer. If they take a guy in the 3rd or 4th round of this deep draft, that kills Etienne's value even more. So now you got to go that might be the selling point, is trade them now because they might take a running back. And if you're willing to take the chance that they're going to take a running back, but you're I'll make the trade for him, then that's kind of the risk reward you got to look at and decide what makes sense. Are you willing to take the risk? Sure. I am, but others might not be. And so that might be worth them selling them off just so they don't have to sit here and worry that they take someone in his draft and his stock plummets even further than it already has.
Yeah, fair.
All right, Aiden, give us another player.
I'm sorry, I'm going to say no running back, but to your point, this running back class is so deep that I feel like you can get a lot of established veterans that people are worrisomely selling off for relatively cheap. So, Kenneth Walker, I just think from the Seahawks. I just think people are like, oh, he can't catch out of the backfield. And number two, I feel like people want to make force Zach Charbonnet, to be a thing more than he actually has. Like people say, oh my God, since he was drafted, he's going to come in and take over Kenneth Walker's workload. No, that hasn't been the case. Kenneth Walker is perfectly healthy. Zach Charbonnet, let's be honest, barely gets any touches. And we're talking about actionable advice here. Let me throw this to you guys. What do you guys think of this trade? Because a couple of weeks, or like a month or so ago, I made this trade. I got Kenneth Walker, and the other person, all it took from me was Jalen Warren, Marshawn Lloyd, who cares, in a third-round rookie pick. I think I won the trade, but what do you guys think?
First of all, I love your disdain for Marshawn Lloyd. Okay, that notwithstanding. JT, what do you think of the trade?
Yeah, I like Marshawn Lloyd more than other people, but I think, last year. Yeah, last year people, Jacobs kind of showed he's not going anywhere soon. So I think that pushes Lloyd down a bit. I like Jalen Warren, but again, he's an RB2 like flex play for me. And I have Jalen Warren in a million leagues, so it's not like I'm talking crap about Jalen Warren because I have him and I play him everywhere. But I like Kenny Walker a lot.
Me too.
Like, I just think he's highly underrated. I agree with Aiden. I think he's a guy that people kind of forget about. I think they're poo-pooing Darnold going there and Metcalf leaving. I think people kind of think the Seahawks are going to fall apart. I like Kenny Walker. I'm also on the same thing with Aiden. I don't like Zach Charbonnet at all. I never have. I don't understand it. I don't understand the love for him. I'm in 60, 70 leagues. I do not have Zach Charbonnet on one league.
I like
that tells you how that's how little I have. And I have a lot of Kenny Walker. So I actually like that trade. I understand the person that they were trying to get younger with depth going. Jalen Walker's a little bit of a downgrade from Jalen Warren, is a downgrade from Walker. Lloyd, you're betting on the potential in the future because he's about a mid-second round pick for fantasy purposes. And in a deep running back class, I can take a shot on another running back in the third. So if I'm a team that needs depth, I don't mind that move because you're going to get a shot at three relatively younger running backs. But if I'm a team competing, I want Kenny Walker in that trade for sure.
In that, my roster there was established. If I read you I could send you it later, but if I read you my lineup, you'd be like, oh my God, I actually won the championship 2 years ago and was the runner up last year. So I had the room to trade for Walker and
you make that move.
RB position.
Absolutely. You make that move.
Let me throw out two guys here. And I want you both to tell me, one, who is the better value?
Okay.
And two, who would you what would you give up for them? Okay. Who is the better value currently on a team? Ramondre Stevenson or Brian Robinson Jr.?
Ramondre. I'm very, very scared because it sounds more and more like the Commanders are going to take a running back very high. I'm very scared about Brian Robinson Jr.'s future. And Ramondre, I know he's been a little disappointing over the last couple of years, but Mike Vrabel is going to love to run the ball, and Ramondre can absolutely be a bell cow. I don't know how JT feels, but I'm in on Ramondre and out on Brian Robinson.
For me, I have been way too low on Brian Robinson his whole career. So I will say that. I feel like I've just kind of flat out forgot about him, and he's definitely better than I've given him credit for, and he's definitely worth more than I've probably considered in fantasy. Ramondre, I thought I got an absolute steal on him in a couple of redraft leagues 2 years ago, and he just has been disappointing. I still think he could do something if they can improve that offensive line. I mean, that O-line was just terrible last year. I mean, Jorge, you know it. We basically, for Shoot the Gap, when we were picking our sack lunch guys, we were taking whoever was playing against the
whoever's facing the page.
Because they were they couldn't block anybody. They were terrible. I think they're going to improve there. I think Ramondre is going to be in the mix. I do think they're going to go running back in the draft somewhere. The only question is they need so many spots that I don't see them going running back very high. They can't afford. They need so many other positions. I think they'll take a shot at somebody maybe 6th round, but I would be surprised if they go very high. I think the Commanders think they're way closer because of the playoffs and everything happened. I think they're due for a regression next year just because of everything that happened. Jorge, sorry to say that, but I still think they're going to be a good team. But I also think feel like they have a little more luxury, a little more room to go get a running back earlier in this class. And if I'm the Commanders, not that I'm out on Brian Robinson, I just think with this deep of draft class and knowing where they sit with QB, O-line, their defense is looking pretty solid all around. They went and got Debo. They still have McLaren. I still think they can go wide receiver, but I think running back is where they've got to probably put their most focus on as far as like mid round. So I could easily, and this is the only reason I'm saying Stevenson is I'd rather have Stevenson. Even though I think Robinson's been better than him recently, I think the Commanders have a lot higher chance of taking a running back in the 3rd, 4th round, where I just think the Patriots are going to wait till like the 6th before they go after an RB.
Jorge, you're the Commanders fan. What do you think of Brian Robinson?
I think JT was a minute or a second away from getting muted by me on the controls over on this side. he redeemed himself slightly by getting rid of the negativity. No, I think, you listen to all the local sports talk media here in DC area. You see, there are two sides of this coin. One is he's just a guy. He doesn't do anything that blows you away. But let's not forget he was dealing with an injury last year, which we kind of hampered him. So did we get to truly see the real Brian Robinson? Let's think about this. Like 2 years ago, dude got shot, right? And then came back in the season. Then last year, in terms of, being a good catch, a receiving back, as well as a north-south runner, he was surprisingly very good as a dual, weapon there for the Commanders. This past year, dealing with an injury, and I think if this draft wasn't so heavy in the running back position, I don't think they would make a move from Brian Robinson. I mean, that being the case, it is deep. The running back position is deep. So I definitely see what you're saying as far as them wanting to take somebody maybe a little bit more dynamic. I don't think they get rid of Brian Robinson by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think he's like one of these people that they trade for like a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick. I think there's some consistency that you want to have at the running back position. So if that's my thought process, and if that ends up being the case where they do not trade him or he is on the roster, I think he could potentially be a steal, for somebody who potentially could be a flex for you or a deep flex or a RB3 on your teams going forward, just because we don't know what the rookie, if there is a rookie drafted, what they will do. Okay.
I was just looking at Washington's picks real quick. They got 29 in the 1st round, 61 in the 2nd, no 3rd rounder. Houston's pick in the 4th, so number 128, then at 1/6, 1/7. So now that I'm looking at they have less picks than I remember originally looking at. With them with no 3rd round pick and no 5th round pick, if they don't go running back in the 4th, they might just be waiting. They might be happy with Brian Robinson for another year. I could see that happen. So there's a good chance that Robinson, could be a buy low candidate. Like you're right. People might just kind of be over him. He's never been really a sexy name, even though he's played way better than I think everyone ever gives him credit for. Like you said, he's just not one of those players that sticks out to you, but he gives you production. He's a solid RB2 flex play for you. So that's going to be really interesting to me. I tell you what, if Washington does not go out and get a running back with one of those first 3 picks, man, I might be trying to buy me some Brian Robinson this year.
All right, let me throw up another hypothetical here.
Yeah.
This JT will start with you. And this one hurts. And I use the word hurt, very pointedly, because both of these players that I'll be talking about got hurt last year, or re-injured themselves, so to speak. And I'm talking about Jonathan Brooks, the rookie who retore his ACL after coming back from an ACL, and then Tank Dell, who tore everything basically last year against the Kansas City Chiefs, who was also coming back from an ACL his rookie year. let's assume deep benches, right? Let's assume multiple IR spots. If you were going to take a gamble on somebody who is relatively young in their NFL career, and who would you want? Who would you rather take the gamble on, saying I'm going to keep them? Like, who's your DeMarvion Overshown on offense, right? As we're teasing, shoot the gap coming up next. JT, who would you rather give the investment in here? Tank Dell for Dynasty, or Jonathan Brooks in terms of like value? You know what I mean?
For me, I'm real worried about Tank Dell. I mean, he was already small. They've already gone out and got Christian Kirk. I don't know if Tank plays at all this year, and at that point, how much have they moved on from him? I'm probably taking Jonathan Brooks. And part of the reason I'm taking Jonathan Brooks was coming out, he was only 20. So even if he misses all of next year, say he doesn't come back this whole next season, he does sit out there, he's going to come back and basically be the same age as a lot of the rookies coming out in next year's draft that are going to be 22, 23. He's going to still be that same age. He's going to be 22. So I'm in on Brooks because I think, the knee injuries, while it does suck, we have seen guys come back from ACLs, and come back and have really good seasons, really good careers. He's young enough. Now, if Jonathan Brooks was 27, I'd be real nervous, but the fact that he's 21 makes me feel a lot better about it. So I'm still on Jonathan Brooks, especially because at that point, the Chuba Hubbard deal is going to be coming up. They signed the extension. If he can get a solid season in, I think they could go to him. So I'm on Brooks over Tank. I just think Tank's injuries worry me a lot more, especially with his size and age as a little bit older prospect. And I just think Houston with CJ Stroud, they saw everyone else in their division waste the rookie contracts of their QBs. I think they're going to just keep loading up on wide receivers to make sure that CJ Stroud's good. And I just see there's a less chance they wait around for Tank Dell, where I think Carolina will wait around for Jonathan Brooks.
What about you, Aiden, real quick?
This hurts me so much because over the last couple of years, I really love both these guys. But I think, as much as it pains me to say, I think I'm on the Tank Dell side. I know JT was on the Brooks side, but I think I'm on the Tank Dell side just because at least Tank Dell has shown somewhat really good production in the NFL. At least he's shown us something. Jonathan Brooks hasn't really shown us a single thing. He tore his ACL in college at Texas his last year there. He tore his ACL in Carolina. And now they added Rigo Dowdle. They still have Chuba. And at the point where Jonathan Brooks comes back, it's kind of like, is he going to fit really into this rotation if they do bring back Rigo Dowdle after the 1-year deal they gave him? So I'm going to go with Tank Dell just because of the production he's shown versus Jonathan Brooks, who hasn't shown anything. But I totally understand what JT and other people are saying with being worried about Tank Dell's size and small stature and the injury history with that, and it doesn't go well. But I am on the Tank Dell side just for those reasons by a little bit. It's close, though.
All right, let's cap off the show by talking about one situation here at the wide receiver position. Again, we're going to be talking about value. And I think we can all say, whether it's us three or those of you who are watching, which, by the way, thank you very much for tuning in to Dynasty 365. Who is the real value at the wide receiver position for the Green Bay Packers? Because I feel like they're like the equivalent of like Spider-Man, like the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other. It's like, who's
all the
guy?
same?
It's all the same. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to talk about Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed was Jaden Reed wasn't the guy, And then Romeo Doubs had some, had some good weeks. Dontavian Wicks was the dynasty darling of 2024. That didn't really pan out in the way a lot of people were thinking. But all of them have shown flashes and glimpses, just nobody's really separated themselves. And really the Jaden Reed thing, that was probably one of the more disappointing stories at the wide receiver position for fantasy. But who's the best value here? Aiden, let's start with you. Let's work backwards, and then we'll get to JT.
So hypothetically, you could argue that the best, this isn't going to make sense, but stick with me here. The best value on the Packers wide receiver room right now isn't even on the team. Like if they draft someone in the second round, like Alec Amino out of Stanford, Jaden Higgins at Iowa State, that guy's an immediate target hog and used to draft him everywhere in rookie drafts. But like realistically, not in a joking way. I think in like Jaden Reed is the marquee guy. Christian Watson floating out there. Who knows? Romeo Dobbs, I think, is the value because.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
What did you say? Sorry.
I said I totally forgot about Christian Watson because he's been like off the
field.
field.
Well, it's easy to forget about when you don't play. So.
I was just going to talk about him once it was my turn.
Romeo Dobbs, I think, is when you talk about value, is the third or fourth guy down the board because he always has these flashes. I always thought that Romeo Dobbs should get more targets than he actually does. I think he deserves a lot more targets. For some reason, Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love just don't play him as much as they should. So I'm going to go with Romeo Dobbs. But honestly, like they need to draft a rookie high and feed a bunch of targets to him. But Dobbs is the guy right now for me.
What about you, JT?
I think Jaden Reed is the best player, and I'm hoping they realize that in the offseason and figure out a way to get him the ball more. Because when he touched the ball, when he actually got targets, he touched the ball either running or receiving, he was great. He was really good when he got the ball. He just didn't see a ton of target or touches. He was fantastic for best ball last year. If you were at him in a best ball league, you loved him because he got you points without having to, play a ton or get a ton of targets. Value wise, though, I think he's still the guy that's worth the most. So he's going to be the hardest guy to acquire. I was going to bring up Christian Watson. He might be the best value in that he's almost dead to people. Like people just don't believe in him. You could get Christian Watson for probably a 4th round pick right now if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And what the hard thing is, the hard sell for me is there's a ton of guys in mocks I've been doing. I like in the 4th round that I'd probably take over Christian Watson. Because I'm telling you this right now, if I could get Pat Bryant from Illinois in the 4th round of a mock draft, I would rather have Pat Bryant over Christian Watson. So that tells you, even if you could get a value of Christian Watson, a 4th round pick, I don't even know if I'd want him over a 4th round pick. That's how bad he's been. It's just a huge disappointment. Romeo Dobbs, he's probably the value. He still doesn't have a big name, but he's out there. I have to be honest. The problem with me with Romeo Dobbs is I just don't believe. I'm just one of those guys. I just don't believe in him. Long term, I have a hard time putting him in my lineup any week and be like feeling good about it. So
boomer bust guy for sure. But
yeah, he is. So he's probably, Christian Watson's probably the absolute best value in the fact that you could get him just dirt cheap. But Jaden Reed's going to cost you the most, but he's the player I believe in the most. And I'm probably not. I actually have a team where it's not a very deep bench, and I'm trying to decide if I drop Romeo Dobbs.
Jeez.
Like legitimately, I have like so many draft picks. I'm like, man, do I just drop him? It's that bad because it's just not a very deep bench in this league, and so he's on my cut, which I can't say if I'm thinking about cutting him. That I think he's the
well, you could probably sell him to someone for a cheap draft pick.
Yeah, so that's the other thing for me is like he's a guy that I'm going to look at like maybe I sell him for a 3rd. If I could sell Romeo Dobbs for a 3rd, I would probably do that because I'd rather take a shot at a rookie running back or maybe like a Jalen Knoll or something like that in the 3rd round. So
that's fair. I've just always thought Dobbs deserves more targets than the flashes he shows. But
yeah, and that's the problem with the Green Bay. Like, are they just gonna forever be a team that spreads it around?
It's
and
annoying.
So you're just gonna get a week or two out. You're gonna get a really good game 2 or 3 weeks a year for each player, but that's how it's gonna be all year.
Yeah, it's annoying, frustrating. Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Dynasty 365. If you like what you heard, head over to where you listen to podcasts, download it, and subscribe to the Dynasty 365 podcast. You can also watch all our episodes previously recorded over on our YouTube channel. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you're notified when Fantasy and Frames drops. The awesome content that I'm totally biased towards, but it's also true. So before we get over to the Shoot the Gap studio, JT and I, Aiden, anything you want to plug that you're working on, or just in general before we get out of here?
Over the last week or two, the articles have slowed down in this kind of dead-ish period right before the draft. I'm looking to get at least 1 or 2 more articles out before the draft, but if not, you can find my articles after the draft. I do have a Buffalo Bills-centric podcast called Around the Slice. I'm a diehard Bills fan, as you can tell by the flags behind me. And then right now I'm working on my updated Dynasty and Rookie rankings you can check out on the site when those are published right before the draft as well.
Nice. JT, what about yourself?
Like I said before, working on a bunch of running back articles for DLF at the moment, doing our ADP from March from there. Basically, last year we went 1 to like 16. I'm starting in reverse this year. So the article will be out this week. I'm actually going to running back 20 because I feel like this draft is so deep. So I'm starting running back 20 to 13 and then going back the next 4 positions, 12 to 8 and all the way down to 1 over the next couple weeks before the draft. And then post draft, I will be coming out with more running back articles, basically taking my grades and my evaluations of those players and then reevaluating them depending on landing spot and draft capital, where I would now pick them compared to what I had them before the draft. So doing all those types of things, and then always here on the podcast with you and doing everything else. So yeah, those are the articles I have coming up. So all kinds of rookie spotlights, running back articles, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, as we were talking on today's episode, I've been adjusting my Dynasty rankings, which you can head over to fantasyandframes.com and check those out, as well as my rookie rankings on offense. Putting out this weekend an IDP article. I know this is not Shoot the Gap, but I'm putting out an IDP article talking about the fallout from free agency and just what does that mean heading into the NFL draft. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, just, give us all a follow on social media. Aiden at A Weingartner 13. JT at JT Orange, and myself at Jorge B. Edwards over on the X Machine. And of course, follow Fantasy and Frames wherever you go on social media. We have tons of stuff posted every single day, and we really appreciate all y'all tuning in. And we'll be back this time next week. And then, folks, just keep it on your calendar. Night 1 of the NFL draft, as we do every single year, we will have a live stream for the first round, and probably on Friday night rounds 2 and 3 as well. So you're going to be getting a lot of Fantasy and Frames content. We have the Writer Dynasty podcast starting up really soon on Thursday nights going forward. We got the draft show coming back May 1st with Stacey Perez and company. So just a whole lot of stuff going on. But speaking of stuff going on, we got Shoot the Gap next. And therefore, for Aiden, JT, I'm Jorge. We'll see you all next week.
Wow!